All right, is that working? Okay. We'll hope that that stays working. Okay, sorry guys. All right, first of all, let's start with names so I can get names. Casey, Ashlyn, Ashlyn, Sarah, Matt. Okay. All right. I'm sorry I'm late. My wife is out of town. My better half is like usually runs the show with the kids, and I was running late, and I totally forgot that I had to do this. Luckily, I had a consultation this weekend, and so I'm just going to kind of go over what I did for a listing appointment. Um, has anybody been on a listing appointment yet? Are y'all brand new? Okay, no, like just barely got your licenses, right? New home sales is what you used to? Okay. Have you ever been on a listing appointment? Okay. Okay. Okay, so I have a pretty like set system on how I handle things. Do you guys know how to do maybe I will actually need this. You guys know how to do a cloud CMA? Do you know what that is? Okay, have they showed you or talked to you about any of that? Okay, let's see if I can figure out what to do here. Come on. Anybody know how to get out of this? By the end of the session, you'll feel confident leading a complete listing. I'm basically not going to use any of this. I don't even know what's on here. There we go. I'm not really sure. Okay. So when I put together a market analysis, I basically just find the particular listing. So I'll show you the actual listing that I have here. So this is the home. I'm actually just going to pull it up on the main screen. Let's do that. Okay. So this client actually reached out to me, said that this is an investment property. They've never lived in the home. There's tenants in it currently, and they're looking to sell probably at the beginning of April. Okay. So my listing appointment wasn't in person, it was over the phone because there's tenants there. And what I do is, so I take this particular listing and then I basically just go in and does everybody know how to do a market analysis? Did they go over that yet? Okay. So I basically pull comparables and then I run it through the cloud CMA. And I'll actually show you what that is. So you guys can pass this. So this is the actual house that we're doing a market analysis and listing appointment for. This, actually, we'll dive into that in a second. Okay. All right. So anyways, that house, so I call this lady calls me, says she wants to sell the house. And typically I would go over, sit down with her and go through everything and typically what I do in person is I record the conversation. It gives me an opportunity to revert back to that later. And then I also put that transcript from the conversation, the whole listing appointment is recorded. I put that transcript into ChatGPT and create a summary email that I send to the sellers after I leave. That way they know exactly what we talked about and what our next to-do lists are. So like any type of like repairs that we talked about, what the pricing is, um, like when we're actually planning on listing, those type of things will come out during the listing appointment. I actually have a seller questionnaire that I bring to every single appointment, and I typically go through this line by line and just ask them these questions, write down their answers, but then I also have the recording from the actual listing. Okay, so like when I record it, and I sit down with her, and she says, "Okay, so we kind of have a general." Before I even actually sat down for the listing appointment, there's a handful of questions that I like to ask people. I like to ask them if they're interviewing other agents, just so you know if it's a competitive situation and how like aggressive you need to be as far as like pricing and just kind of like strategy. I ask if they have any idea what they think their house is worth, because you kind of want to gauge where if they think it's like worth astronomical amount and then you come in low, um, they're going to obviously have questions about whether or not they want to work with you, right? Just kind of want to gauge where they're at in their headspace as far as like, do we think this house is worth a lot? Do we think it's not worth a lot? It's kind of funny. They bought this house in 2022 and they said like, look, we probably think that the house is worth in between 530 and I think they said 530 and 550. It's in Orem, just up the street basically from us. So if you kind of look at where the map is, so you've got, let's see, Canyon Parkway. Wait, is this the right one? Yeah, Orem. Anyways, you've got Canyon Parkway here, a lot of the river bottoms and stuff right there. It's not the area is a lot of older houses. There are some newer houses and then some really nice houses in here. Um, Anyways, I get her on the phone and I say, okay, I sent all of this information to her. So we've got our value proposition that's on our team. This is what our value proposition looks like. I can get you a copy of all these. This is actual market report that we have. And then this is just a listing agreement. Always bring that. So this is all the stuff that I bring to the actual listing appointment. And the main thing that I focus on, I don't even open up any of this. When I first walk in, just to kind of back things all the way up, this is exactly how I handle my listing appointments. When I go into a house, the very first thing that I do is I obviously introduce myself, talk to them a little bit at the door, and then I hand them the MLS sheet. So this MLS sheet, so if they have ever been sold on the market, I always pull the previous MLS listing. And the reason for that is this is what I'm basing my entire market analysis off of what they originally told me. So on our initial phone call, I'll say, what do you think it's worth? And have you made any improvements since you purchased the home? And they'll tell me whatever improvements they might be, and then I'll add them into this market analysis, right? But I'll hand them this original printout and I'll say, okay, I want you to take a look at this. I hand them a pen or a highlighter or whatever, and this MLS report. And I say, take a look at this, go through it and see if there's any errors or anything that's incorrect on the MLS sheet that is like square footage, whatever it might be. Take a look at it, highlight any errors in here. I'm going to run through the house really quick and take a look at the house. There's two reasons for that. For one, I want to see if there's anything on the MLS report from their previous purchase that would suggest that my market analysis might be off, whether it's square footage, number of bedrooms, like garages, whatever. but I also want to give them something to do so they don't follow me through the houses I'm going in through and critiquing or taking photos of parts of their house to kind of try to determine, is my market analysis accurate based on the previous listing and kind of like what I was expecting. Because if you get the homeowner to walk through with you, I'm a talker, and we'll just end up, my listing appointments take like an hour usually. Sometimes it's like 2 hours depending on the person. So I try to trim down on areas that I know are not necessary. So like them walking me through the house and like telling me all of these like features about the house that they love is just slows us down from getting to like actually what helps is like building rapport and going over their market analysis and really discussing what they want to get out of the sell of their house, right? So anybody have questions so far?
Kind of related to this. So you're selling a place with someone in it?
Yeah, so I don't, my experience, I don't really love selling a house with tenants in it. Every time that I've tried to do it, it has been a total pain in the ass. Tenants aren't motivated to sell a house, so they don't tend to be as clean as the person that wants to sell it. Sometimes you run into situations like, do you know where Belmont is in Provo? It's like a condo complex, right? There will always be tenants in there. You're just stuck with that. So in certain investment properties, that just makes sense. But in this particular situation where it's a single family home, the person that most likely is going to buy this is probably not going to be an investor. And so we want to get the tenants out. It's hard because sometimes then you're carrying a mortgage payment or like the seller is carrying a mortgage payment when they're trying to sell. And if it takes a long time to sell, then they could be like, okay, we're paying $3,000 a month. So that's already, we're into it $9,000 in 3 months, which is 90 days is kind of not crazy in this market, right? But in this situation, they already knew that. So the tenants are going to be out at the end of March. And so April's perfect time to list. It'll be vacant. We should be good to go. But when there's tenants in it, I don't really love it. You mostly have to, what I recommend for clients is trying to incentivize the tenants to be good tenants. And by what I mean by that is like, we're going to discount your rent by like a couple $100 a month in an effort to, will you keep the house clean? And, just be courteous to showings because they're going to get showings at weird times of the day and then they're going to have to leave. So it's harder for like bigger families, like a bigger house, like with more kids that are like more family that's in the actual house when they're renting it. It gets more and more complicated. And sometimes those tenants don't want to move. And so they like sabotage the sale. So I've seen some pretty crazy stuff with that too. But maybe we'll dive into story time later. Okay. Any other questions so far? So we're sitting down, they're reviewing the MLS sheet. I'm running through the house. Okay. I've been doing this for 15 years. I know I don't look like a normal agent, but I've got a pretty good eye for like what's going to be a deal breaker for a buyer. It usually comes down to kitchens and bathrooms. Kitchen and bathrooms obviously are uh, they're the most different, right? So like the quality in a kitchen can be drastically different than like a bedroom. A bedroom updated is just, that's 4 walls and carpet or flooring. So like so much in there's not really much that you can do to like improve that to really change the value. So bathrooms and kitchens and like a finished basement are a big deal. So I keep an eye on like what kind of condition the bathroom's in, what kind of presentation when you walk into the house, because usually a buyer will fall in love with the house within the first minute and a half of looking at the house. So, and most of the time they even fall in love with it before they even see the house because they're looking at online photos. So they get to the house, they pull up. There's usually like, this house is better than what we expected. They walk in, then they'll know really quickly if they like the house. And that's kind of what we're looking for is like, how can I improve that situation? Like when you walk into a house, how can I make it look the best that it possibly can in order to get it sold? Questions so far? Anything else? Okay, so then after I get done looking at the house, if there's anything broken or if there's anything that I want them to repair, I'll take a picture of it just so that I remember. to bring it up either during the consultation or in my summary email that I send after the listing appointment. Because I always send an email after the listing appointment just to cover everything that we talked about. And then I feel like it sets us apart from, or sets me apart from the other people that are interviewing for the job. Because I do a lot of like, because I'm on the Red Sign team, we have like a lot of Google like listings and stuff like that. And we get people calling us from all over the planet. It's not my SOI. And so I'm usually in competitive situations competing against other agents. And so I have to be kind of like on the ball. And so a follow-up email answering any of their questions and those type of things is a good way to kind of set yourself apart. And then really knowing like the market analysis, this cloud CMA, I don't know if everybody does it. Everybody probably should because it has a lot of detail in here. Like I pass that around, right? So it covers pretty much every stat that a seller is going to want to know as far as like when it comes to selling. Um, Typically, I like to stay around like five. Like in my market analysis, I want to try to say like 5 or 6 comparables. But in this particular situation, what I did, I actually ran into a problem when I was doing the market analysis. I had, did I bring those down here? There's like a set of comps. Here we go. So I did the market analysis, and normally I just put it in the actual Cloud CMA, but I deleted that part and then printed out the actual printouts. Okay. And the reason I did that is because there was more of them. It wouldn't let me send this as a PDF. It wanted me to send it as a link, and I didn't really want to do that. I wanted to include actual PDF. So I deleted it from this and then just printed out each individual one of these. That way we can review them individually and they can see like all the actual individual stats for the houses. But the reason that I ended up going with more comparables is the most recent comparables that had sold for this home. There was 2 in particular. There was one that sold it sold actually in December of last year for $485. It was originally listed at $544. So they sold for significantly less than their actual asking price, right? What is that freaking, there's 45, it's like $60,000. So they discounted about 60 grand. And there was another one that was listed at 547 that sold for 505. And based on the fact that they had told me they were hoping to get 530 at least out of this, I saw those 2 were as the most recent comparables, and I got a little nervous. So I was like, man, we're going to get burned on this one bad. So I actually went back and looked at more comparables. So I went all the way back 365 days, and then I kind of like worked my way back in. So normally I would stay 90 days. I would stay within 500 square feet up and below the actual like size of the home. And then I would do probably 10 years above and below, and then within a mile radius, if I already said that probably. Um, and just try to keep like bathrooms and bedrooms somewhat close. Acreage is usually, um, maybe like a point, like a tenth of an acre difference is what I try to keep it in. But um, anyways, so I had a bunch more that I could actually comply or apply to this market analysis that would help me kind of justify a little bit of a higher price and just keep them aware that the 2 most recent sales were much, much lower than what my actual like analysis is, just because it could be timing. Now selling in December could be like actually selling the home in December could have hurt them. Um, and they were on the market for 86 days. So they probably priced a little bit too high initially. And then they started bringing down the price. But by the time the days on market had already climbed too high and people were already starting to question with whether or not it was a deal or not. So days on market's a big deal. The longer it sits on the market, the more likely that they're going to sell for lower and lower and lower. Like guaranteed, even if you lower it to a certain price, and it's, let's say they started at 544 and it sits on the market for 30 days. In this market, they're not going to get 544. But really unlikely. They're going to ask for closing costs or something. As there's too much inventory, they're going to look at other homes too. They're going to be more interested in submitting an offer on a newer home that has more like freshness to it. They're going to feel like I'm going to send a better offer on that one than send a lower offer on this one. Does that make sense? Questions so far? Okay. So when I did the market analysis, basically came up with the idea that I actually feel pretty comfortable in listing the home in between 535 and 540. Um, Part of the reasoning for that, though, is I took all the sold listings and then I averaged out what the seller paid concessions are. And then so some of them were like 14,000 and some of them were zero. So average is 700 or $7,200. I feel pretty comfortable listing at 540 with the idea that those or 535 with the idea that somebody's going to ask us for concessions. So we're going to fall below 530. Does that make sense? Okay. Um, this net sheet is so basically after I have sit down with them, I open up my folder and then I pull out that questionnaire and I set that in front of me, start asking them a few questions. But then first thing I say is, okay, I try to email this in advance. So this is just everything. I call this our value proposition and marketing plan. It's just our listing packet, but it sounds dumb to call it a listing packet when you send it to them, right? So I call value proposition, marketing, uh, you know, uh, packet, right? Well, anyways, I pull that out and I ask them, did you look at this in the email that I sent you? And most of the time they'll say yes. Sometimes they'll say no. If they say yes, I ask them if they have any questions, if there's anything in there that caught their eye or that they have questions about. And most of the time they'll say no. And then if they say they didn't read it, then I just say, okay, well, we're not going to go through it right now. I'll pull it out if we need to. But if you can't sleep tonight, it's super boring, pull it out and it'll put you right to bed because it is super boring. There's like nothing in here that people want to sit here and go through and read it, right? It's boring. Um, and then I say, I'll get to the part, let's jump right to the part that you actually care about, what the house is actually worth. So I pull out the market analysis and I say, okay, do you want the deep explanation or do you want me to cut right to the core of this? Most of the time they'll just say, yeah, like jump right to the price. So I'll skip all the way to the very back and I'll say, I am recommending a price in between 535 and 540. And I said, if we sell at 535, the mortgage payoff is $285,000. Commissions are 16,000 for both the buyer and seller. Tax and title is roughly 1% in this situation. Um, and so $5,400. Go ahead. I asked him. Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's another way to do it. There's a couple ways to do it technically. There's a in on the MLS. This is actually kind of a cool tool to you might want to know about. So on the MLS, you just click right here. There's all this list of like member benefits. There's this thing called Remine. Does anybody use Remine or know what it is? Okay, we'll just do a case study here and kind of show you what it is. So most of the easiest way is just to ask them. But sometimes when I'm like doing a market analysis and they're not responding really quickly, or um, sometimes I'll pull this up. This will also help me get more details on a house sometimes. So basically, it's just like I don't even know how to describe this website and what the heck it does. Let's just put in my address and I'll so 2849 South. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay, so this is my place. So it says the value is roughly 675. It says 3 bedrooms, 3 bath, but actually has a finished basement. So there's actually 6 bedrooms, 3 baths. Um, let's see. But here, where does it say? Well, look what I bought it for. Yeah. So that's either low or I've lost a lot of money in the last couple of years. A lot of money. But so typically, where is it? Oh, it's right here. So on here, value loan balance. See, my loan balance is even higher. My net equity is technically negative 63,000. But wow, I'm being an open book here. Anyways, so this is a weird feature that Remine offers in that they take what the initial loan was recorded. So they see like the initial rate. So the rate is 6% is what it's supposed to be. Oh, 6.35 rate estimated. What my down payment was. Actually, they don't know what my down payment was. They know what the deed was recorded against the house. So like the actual loan amount. Okay. So the loan amount that was recorded against the house and the rate that was recorded with it. And then they plug that into an amortization schedule for Remine. And then they just say, okay, if I made my minimum payments for as long as I've owned it, then technically my loan balance would be $739,000. So sometimes I'll use this as a way to pull up information. But I mean, it's got lots of cool stuff like somewhere in here. Oh, so different valuations. So this takes like Redfin's estimates, First American. These are all estimated ranges of value depending on the various like different places. Like this one says Redfin's, it says it's 740. This estimate says it's 738. First American's like way low. Remine's way low. Estimated rents 3,215. Like that's good information to have. Sometimes like when I can't, let's say the house was never listed on the MLS. Sometimes I'll come here first before going to tax records because this pulls from other locations other than just tax records. And so it's wrong. It says 3 bedrooms, 3 baths, and 45. It's the right square footage, but it does have a picture of it and everything, how much acreage it has. So sometimes I'll use this as to pull information to get the house up and on the market. Okay. And then seller paid concessions, tax and title. Tax and title is one that's kind of tricky because it's going to vary. Sometimes if it's a little bit lower in price, I will recommend a little bit higher in price. Let's say like $1 million, a million plus. So if you do 1%, is it going to cost them $10,000 in closing costs to close the house on the seller side? Probably not. So sometimes I'll reduce that to 0.06. So a little bit more than 0.5%. But this is just a guesstimate. I haven't earned their business yet. And so I'm not going to have the title company like put stuff together, give me an estimate of how much it is. So I just guess. It gets me close enough to that answer. It might be off like by a couple $100, but nothing significant. Um, you'll notice one of the things that I do that's a little bit different, and some agents hate this and some people like this. One of the things I do a little bit different is you'll notice I say 3% for the listing agent. I actually note it. It's a 3% commission. On the buyer side, I always list 1 to 3%. And that is because ever since the lawsuit, the NAR lawsuit, has anybody talked to you about that? Oh my gosh. Okay, so there was an NAR lawsuit like 2 or 3 years ago where there was a dispute on who actually pays uh, buyer's agent commissions. Who pays the buyer's agent? Anybody? Who technically pays the buyer's agent commission? No. The buyer is technically responsible to pay the buyer's agent. But here's the crazy thing. That never happens. I've been doing this for 15 years and I've never been paid by a buyer. So I've always been paid by a seller. Well, that's also because I'm not going to, the buyer usually doesn't have the money to or I'm not going to be like a butthead and make them pay it, right? So, um, what ends up happening is the buyer submits an offer, and in the purchase contract now, they ask for a commission. So it didn't used to be that way. We used to agree upfront how much they were going to offer to the buyer's agent as compensation for bringing a buyer. It used to be in the listing agreement. and it is actually in this, but there's another thing in here at the bottom. It says something like brokerage fees are not set by the board, yada yada. But anyways, oh, this isn't the older one. But yeah, this is the old one. That's funny. Anyways, there's two sections in here. You list how much, or three sections. You list how much you're charging, how much it would be if the buyer is unrepresented, and then how much you're willing to offer for the buyer's agent commission. And I always put 0 in the buyer's agent commissions thing, and then there's a place for the seller to initial, and it says we are not agreeing to offer a commission or like disclose a commission that we are offering for the buyer's agent. So I never actually offer a commission because I know they're always going to ask. So when they call me and ask me, I always want to tell them, like, I want you to plan for 3%. But the reality is if we get in a multiple offer situation, or let's say somebody comes in and asks for concessions, I turn into a bully because the buyer's agent is asking us to pay their commission. And the buyer is in a weird spot, the buyer and the buyer's agent. Okay. So when they submit an offer, they're asking for essentially more commission to, like, the buyer needs that to pay their agent, right? So let's say they ask for concessions too. If they ask for, let's say, $10,000 in concessions, I always counter back, not with the concessions, because the buyer needs those most likely to make the deal work. I usually will counter back with a lower commission rate for the buyer's agent, because then it puts a weird bind. There's a little bit of friction there between the buyer's agent and the buyers. Does the buyer's agent want to get in the way of the house that the buyers want? Or is the buyer willing to fold and take a lower commission and just to get the deal done? And the funny thing is there's a lot of agents out there that will completely fold because they're weak negotiators. Like I always will just counter back and just say, let's see if we can get like a lower commission out of them. And then it makes it so the buyers are happy. They look like the hero for taking a lower commission, but then we still win because we negotiated like a better deal for you, right? So I always put the buyers in a weird position, and there's agents on my team that absolutely hate it, but I do it all the time. Um, that's just negotiation tactic, right? So I explain that to my sellers, like that's something that we are going to lean on if we have the opportunity to. If they send us a great offer, like let's give them a full price, let's give them what they're asking for. But otherwise, let's use it as a little bit of a negotiation tactic. And sometimes they won't fold. Like I literally just had a deal where we paid them 3.5%. So I took 2% and they took 3.5%. But we were the more desperate ones, and she needed 3.5 because she was buying it for her brother. And that's how a 3.5% down is for an FHA loan. So she just gifted her entire commission to her brother to buy the house. So she needed 3.5, but it's still like she got 3.5 when I got 2. So, anyways, funny story. Anyways,
You're put in the opposite position. You're the partner.
it kind of depends on the situation. It kind of depends on the client. So, like some clients, let's say, show them like 50 houses. Like I would make the sellers aware. I'd be like, look, I showed them like 50 houses. And also like part of like what I have in my corner is I've been doing this for a long time. So it's like a little bit of a different confidence level, and being able to say, like, I know that I'm worth the amount. So that's the hardest thing that you guys are going to struggle with. That's the hardest thing that every agent struggles with, is like being able to say, I'm worth the 3% that you're paying me. So you're talking about $1 million house. That's $30,000 in commissions. Like some people don't even make $30,000 in a year. You sell 2 houses and you've already, like, a lot of people, like, they come into real estate and they're like, I'd be awesome if I made like 100 grand. Like, how many of you are like, what's your goal this year? Does anybody have goals like that they've set? Come on. Nobody set goals? What's your goal? See, 160? Okay, so that's like, most people are like, I just want to make 100 grand. So yours is like 160. That's a little bit more, but totally doable. What's yours? 120? Okay. Okay. So you can totally blow past yours. So, and what, you don't have a goal?
So like
What'd you make at your last job? Okay. See, like you're like, sell a couple houses and all of a sudden you're like, dude, I'm like this, I look like a genius for switching to real estate. Right. So like at some point though, you have to like, there's a mental shift because you're also like, am I worth making what I literally made at my last job in one deal? Like I had a deal earlier this year. I closed at the very beginning of the year. I sold a lot that was 1.75 million. And I showed them 2 lots. That's all I did. And then we went through the closing table and then at closing at a 3% commission, it's like 50 some odd $1,000. It was like almost $60,000. Huh? Yeah, I was up in Heber, like clear up the hill. It was like a 5 acre lot that was like up on the hill. So anyways, we closed on that. I literally did almost nothing. And I'm like, I don't deserve this. But then there's other times where you're just like, I've shown this person literally 56 houses, and then we're going to buy a trailer that I'm going to get freaking $2,000 or $3,000 worth of commission on. It, that doesn't feel like it's worth it. Do you know what I mean? So like it kind of all evens out. And sometimes agents get in their heads about whether or not they're worth it. Being an agent is more like owning insurance. So like agents are like more like insurance than actually, sales or whatever. So when you hire an agent, who said this? I can't remember who said it. I just thought it was like the most ingenious idea. So when you buy insurance, you're just hoping I never have to use it, right? You still pay the monthly premiums. And sometimes you get at the end of the year, you're like, I paid freaking $10,000. Sorry, did it make a weird noise? Okay. Sometimes I pay like $10,000 insurance and I didn't even use my insurance. Is it even worth it? But then when you do need it, then you're grateful you had it. That's kind of like what an agent is. You're going to pay an agent a lot of money over the period of time that you hire us. But if you do need us, you're going to be grateful that you had us. Does that make sense? That's just like a good line to like give to somebody like, why do I pay you a commission? And also in your situation, you're new agents, but you have like a whole supporting cast of the office. And then I also use the office stats. We have 300 agents here. We sold like $1 billion worth of real estate last year. You've got tons of people in your quarter. Make it sound like the office is a team, because most people don't understand. Like I tell them that I work at with the Red Sign team, and they're like, "Oh, okay. I thought you worked at Keller Williams." I'm like, "I do," but so like they don't understand the difference between the brokerage or the team or whatever it is. So just use those stats and lean on that, right? Okay. So I showed them this. They asked a little bit about what was some of their questions. I'm trying to remember some of the things that they asked. Like, what are questions that you guys would ask? Like, give me an objection. What's an objection that you think? Do you know what, like an objection? Somebody's like complaining, like, ah. Well, in this situation is a listing though. Yeah. What would be an objection? Why I'm not going to pay you 3%?
What you're gonna do is put it on. Right away.
Well, and typically that's when I would go back into this. So this is our value proposition, kind of breaks down what we do. And so I would recommend, and the office has got to have like, I don't know, what's the word? Like something similar to this that you can kind of basically just steal. Plus nowadays with AI, it's so easy to build stuff like this. Like I could probably build this exact same thing in maybe like 10 minutes. And everybody does the same things. The truth of it is like everybody does the same thing. They put it on the MLS. The MLS is syndicated. So once you list it on our MLS, it gets pushed out to every website that you can possibly think about. So it'll end up on the Stern team's website. It'll end up on the Perry Group's website, Dan Kennedy's website, the Red Sign team's website, everybody's website, right? It'll end up on Zillow, it'll end up Trulia, Redfin, everywhere. So the syndication helps a lot. It'll be everywhere. One of the things that I tell them, like obviously we do professional photos. We have a whole team that's backing us. But 3%, the truth is like when people complain about 3%, they're complaining about the net that they're getting, right? And when somebody else is offering, let's say I'm competing against somebody and they're like, well, somebody else will do it for 1%. My argument with that is like they're assuming that each agent is going to get the same result. Okay. So they're assuming a 1% agent is going to get the same result that a 3% agent is going to get. They're putting us all in the same basket. And that's kind of like, okay, well, not everybody's created equally. Like we bring a lot more to the table than this other agent that's only offering 1%. Yes, they're probably going to put it on the MLS and they're going to get the syndication. They're going to maybe do an open house, but they're also not going to be as motivated to sell the house for a higher price because we're getting a full commission and they're just, they're counting on quantity. Like you're hoping if they list it at 1%, they can get like 100 listings over the year and then they'll make it up over the time. So the odds of them competing with us is like, it's a little bit, it's a value situation, right? We bring a lot more to the table than somebody that's only offering 1%. In this particular situation, the house is going to be vacant. So I told them some of the things that I recommended was virtual staging. So virtual staging is becoming really popular just because AI offers an opportunity to stage a house with a vacant home, vacant photos with furniture in them. It doesn't create the same level of staging that like actual physical staging does. Physical staging actually has statistics around it that suggests that a house with staging in it that's properly staged, a buyer will stay in it for 10% to 20% longer than they would if the house was just straight up vacant. And it actually helps it sell it. And I can attest to that. But this actual staging, like paying for staging, is expensive. Like we had one that I actually staged in Pleasant Grove. We staged the whole house because the seller requested it, and it was like $3,000. So we staged it was $1 million home, but like staging the whole home, that's $3,000 a month. So like if it goes past that first month, you're already $6,000 into it. That really eats into your profits as far as like, so what I tell them, I was like, if we do stage the home, we'll stage the home for photos and for the first month. And then if we go beyond that first month, we're not going to pay for it. You can pay for it, but we don't want to pay for it because it doesn't make it for the profitability of like actually selling your house doesn't make sense. Right. And that particular one, we got an offer within like 4 or 5 days of listing. They went under contract. And then 2 days after being under contract, they're like, we want to pull the house off the market and cancel. And so those sellers, even though we did our job and the house went under contract and we put tons of money into it, they're like, we want to pull it off the market and cancel our contract. They're like, we have some like medical issues that are like preventing us from selling. So we canceled the contract. No, we got them to pay the $3,000 back. But it only because they were nice. They could have fought us on that, right? But the crazy thing is they had to pay the buyers earnest money. So the buyers put earnest money down, and it was $10,000. So they ended up paying like $13,000 just to get out of the contract. I was like, just sell the house, like just move. Like, you really want to walk away from $13,000? But they did. Okay, so I go through any objections. So sometimes they'll ask like, what do you do for marketing? Sometimes they'll like, do you do open houses? We do open houses, but I don't personally do them. What happens if you bring the buyer? So let's say a buyer calls me on a sign call and says, hey, we want to buy the house. I'll usually discount the commission to like make the deal work. So typically what I offer is like, I'll do the whole thing. So I'll help them sell on the listing side, and we'll do an unrepresented buyer for the buyer's agent or the buyer side. And then we'll charge them an extra 1% for doing all the paperwork and helping the buyer get to the closing table. And mostly because I want to hold their hand, because if they fall out of contract along the way, taking that offer didn't really make sense anyways, right? So a lot of the times we end up like scheduling the inspection and appraisal and doing all the title work and stuff like that. So we'd still charge them a 1%. Any other questions? Things that you might have thoughts about?
As far as the number you brought up for your estimating, it kind of like worked out. That was the range.
Yeah. Well, and that's the truth is like, I ask them that because especially when you're in a competitive situation, sometimes I go into the listing appointment thinking, is there any way possible that they could actually sell the house for the amount that they think that it's worth? And a lot of the times, there's been a few of them where I'm like, there's no way in hell they're getting what they want. And then sometimes they're like way low. And so I'm excited to go in there and be like, look, I can show you like this particular person's an investor. So they're in like, it's not their first rodeo. And so they kind of understood like what the house was worth and like what they should expect. And they even were like, we want to price on the lower end because we want to sell it quickly because we're going to obviously they're going to be in a situation where they're carrying the mortgage. So like they're being pretty reasonable. Sometimes you'll meet with people and they're like, no, we're not doing any of this shit. Like we're selling it at this amount and we're going to do it for 1%. And if you don't want it, then, pound sand. And I'm like, I don't want it. Like, I don't want to freaking, like, I've taken too many listings over my career where I put so much work into them and then they never sell. Or they do sell and they're a total nightmare. Like, sometimes it's just not worth it. Like, I met with a guy that was up in Bountiful. He's a Chinese immigrant and he came in and bought 2 houses in Bountiful. Both of them are like $1 million home. And then he put like $500,000 at least in renovations on both of them. So the first one, he calls me over and he's like, I want to sell my house. And he's like, I want to get 3 million at least. So I pull it up on the MLS and look at it. I'm like, dude, this house is nowhere near $1 million. Like, why did you think this house is even worth $1 million? And he's like, oh, I put like all this stuff into it. And he's like, he shipped all this stuff from China. It's like special glass and like crazy tiles and stuff like that. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll come see it and we'll kind of go from there. So I pulled up the active listings around it and what's recently sold, nothing even over like 1.5. And the benches in Bountiful are really nice homes, It's not like they're freaking dinky pieces of garbage. They're like nice homes. And so I was like, okay, you're in a great area, but like nothing is selling for that. So like, I don't know where you're thinking this house is going to sell for that. So I go up there, it's completely redone and it's the most ridiculous thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And I'm like, dude, there's no way we're getting 3 million for this. And I was like, sorry, like I would love to take a $3 million listing, but it's also going to take so much money, so much effort. And then I'm never going to sell it because $1 million listings are already hard to sell. Like does anybody know who Jimmy Rex is? You ever heard that name? He used to be an agent here. He's a crazy weirdo, but he's like a big time influencer and does like um, public speaking and stuff like that. Anyways, he used to work at this office. And one of the things that I actually took away from him when I first started is you can beat your head against the wall trying to sell $1 million home, or you can go out, and this was a different time. You can try to sell $1 million home and beat your head against the wall, or you can go out and sell five $200,000 condos. And that is my freaking bread and butter. I sell a lot of townhouses and condos, starter homes, don't really get into the bigger stuff very often. Some people kill it in the luxury stuff, but I'm also, look at me, like I don't really look like a luxury agent. So I fit in with like the people that are like blue collar and I'm heavily covered in tattoos. I'm like all covered right now, but I'm heavily tattooed. So that also doesn't really play to the luxury market, but whatever. Um, I can't remember where I was going with that. What was the question?
Kind of curious as far as you ending up, right?
Oh yeah, where I was. Yeah. So that kind of played into it.
Maybe there's.
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, that definitely played into it. Well, well, here's the crazy thing. Look at this. So my range is 535 to 540. A lot of the times what I'll do is it all comes down to this. Where is it? Come on, where am I looking for it? Oh, it doesn't show it right here. Hold on. It does, but it's easier to show right here. So in here, when I first pulled it up, it shows all the like listings, right? Um, but over here, it shows that the low was 460, the median was 549, so slightly above what I was recommending. And then the average is 539. Now, looking at this house, I could tell basically compared to the sold listings, it's a little bit lower in quality compared to some of the other homes that had sold. So I discounted it slightly. So 540 was my top. But median and average are pretty, especially when you have 12 sold listings, it's pretty easy to like take that average and say it's pretty good chance that you're going to end up selling at this price. So I basically just took those numbers and basically what I know about that particular area and what the comparables looked like. And I felt pretty confident that it was going to fall somewhere within that range. The crazy thing is when you take out the active listing, where is it? Come on. Normally I can click on this and it'll pull it out. Why is it not working? But normally you can click on this and play with this number a little bit. So like if you have one that's like, um, let's say there's one that's like a way oddball, it doesn't make any sense. Like this one sold for 630 and then the active listings at 615. Like if I clicked on those and took those out, it would change the averages and then I would kind of have a better idea of like what we're really looking at. Those are anomalies, not necessarily um, the standard here. Right. So I basically just try to come up with do I really think that this house is going to sell for what I'm presenting to him? That's like the biggest thing for me is always I spend a lot of time on market analysis and like trying to go through like what I think the house is going to sell for. Too much time. But I do a lot of prep for a listings because, well, like I said, I'm mostly competitive. I have competitive ones. And there's something to be said for confidence when you go into a listing appointment. Um, if I can go in there feeling like convincing myself that the price is right, it's a lot easier for me to convince them that the price is right. Sometimes you go in and you're like, oh man, I'm not 100% confident in this price. And they can feel that. I saw a weird thing the other day when it's like people talk about like cell phones and radios and um, Bluetooth. It's like that's communication that's just like through the ether. We can't see it, right? But then we fail to recognize that people can sense each other's energy. Like, is that really like that weird of a thing to say? Like that you can sense somebody's energy. Like if they're concerned about it, you can feel that. Does that make sense? There's like that's a real thing, especially in sales. Like you will get eaten alive if you're not confident about what you're doing. They will sense that and they will go with somebody else that feels more confident. So I spend a lot of time convincing myself because I'm also like really dumb. And so I'm like, I have to convince myself that this is right. Okay. Um, any other questions? I'm an open book, so I can tell you everything that like I do. Um, I try to get them to sign the listing agreement at the appointment, but like I said, a lot of the times they're competitive, and so are like, we're not signing. And I am not super aggressive about that. Some agents will be like, no, sign, like get it signed. Um, but I also feel like that creates the kind of person that I'm not. I'm more of like let's say, customer service base in the sales world. So I'm more of a consultant. I'll give them all the information that they need and be super nice and friendly and informative, and then just hope that they pick me out of somebody else. And it works a lot of the times because I usually am really good about following up. That's the other thing too, is once this is all done, the big thing that's going to set you apart is following up. So I usually like like I said, I sit down with them, like after I go around the house and look at everything, and I ask them, is it okay if I record this conversation? And I literally pull out the voice recorder on my phone and just start it. And then we sit down and go through all this. And it'll record everything that we say. And then once it's done, I'll go in and transcribe it, copy and paste it into ChatGPT and just say, I need to send an email to these clients that I just met with. This is everything that we just talked about. This is a transcribed recording. I need you to summarize it and put it into a task list email that I can send to the sellers so that they know what to expect. And then also it gives me a list of things that I might have forgot. Like I need to send them, more comparables, or I need to send them, sometimes they'll ask me like, how many homes have you sold this year or last year? Sometimes they'll ask me that. which I don't love. I don't love that because then it gets into a situation where it's like, are we literally just competing on who sold more homes last year? Or are we competing on um, who is like a better fit for you? You know what I mean? But more homes usually wins. Um, so, and I'll send them that email, and then I'll usually just say, hey, look, I'll follow up with you on such and such a date, and then I'll call them or send them a text later on, and just be like more diligent. Like, do you have any more questions? Like, is there anything I can do to earn your business? Like, I'd love to be a resource. What else can I do to help you? Right? Okay. Anything else? I mean, we technically it's supposed to go to 10:30, I think, but happy to answer lots more questions. I don't have anything going on. So, do you have any questions about doing a market analysis? Anything about um, anything, I guess. Nothing? You guys are easy.
Why did you do
That is a long, convoluted story. So, do you want a full like background? No? Okay. Um, I was on my own. I was on a team when I first started. So when I first started at Keller Williams, I was by myself for a little while. I sold one house, and then I was like, I just want to get on a team. I like help learn like the whole thing. Um, so I joined the Dan Kennedy real estate team, if you know who Dan Kennedy is. I was on his team for a little while, and then left his team after like a year or two. I was on my own and doing really well. Um, but then I got to a point where I was just like kind of burnout. Like I'm heavy lead gen. I don't do a whole lot of social media. I'm not a great marketer. There's a bunch of things I struggle at. I'm really good at like the sales part, like being a buyer's agent or a listing agent, but like the back end of stuff, I'm like as dumb as a rock. And so it's like hard for me to do that. And so that kind of gets into a grind. Like when you're having to do stuff that you absolutely hate every day, it just kind of like sucks. And so like I got into this point where I was lead generating and then I was doing all this other back end stuff. It just that I'd lost the fun. Um, and I went to family reunion and spent a little time with Clay and Johnny. Like I already knew them. They obviously run the office. Um, and kind of just got convinced I wanted to try it, right? And I've been there ever since. It's been a bad financial decision. I will be honest. I've made less money, significantly less money than I had when I was on my own. But I would say that I'm happier, sort of. Like money obviously would make me happier if I was making more money, but it's fine. It's good. I like the team. I like everybody that's on it. We have a lot of fun. So I'm a total weirdo. My office is the weirdest one in the office. It's seriously like I've got tons of crap in there, but it's easy to spot. Like on this corner over here, I got like Legos and shit in there. I don't know. I'm a weirdo. I don't fit in by myself. So I joined the team to um, help alleviate some of the things that I struggled with.
so, so like, for me, doing data entry, like minuscule man, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So considering joining. Right. Why not?
Yeah. And the Wild team's like really impressive. Like that's a perfect example of like that team for some reason managed to pull out higher end listings. Like they're always kind of like generating, and it's a lot of it just kind of starts to get bigger ones. So like Bronson's made friends with like a lot of like really wealthy clients because he's a car nerd. And so like they take the more higher end listings, the Wild team gets branded as being a luxury listing, and then they continue to get more and more and more of them. So I mean, I would not say that's a bad, and I actually think their splits are good, and I think Michaela's a great, I think she basically runs the team now. And I really like Danielle. I, um, I, I actually used to work in an office. I had to right across from Danielle when she was working for a different, agent, and I really like her. She's super smart and really clever. So I would recommend it. Also, there's something to be said for like getting your feet wet. like once you start to get a few transactions going, then you can decide whether or not you want to actually, do it on your own. But the team helps you kind of build a base for um, what you'll build off later on. Like you'll start to get more confident taking listings or like knowing like what things actually matter. Splitting your commission's not fun, especially when you have cap. Like when you go through the cap, um, when you're on a team, the cap's different. So you pay 18,000 to the office when you're on your own. But when you're by yourself, you pay half cap, but only half cap to the office. There's 15,000 to the office and 3,000 that goes towards international or like KW, right? So the office gets 15,000 if you're on our own, but if you're on a team, then it goes down to 7,500. And then the splits change slightly. So instead of going, it's normally like a 70-30 split towards the team or office. That actually goes down to an 80-20 when you're on a team. And that way it's not taking, you get actually paid a little bit instead of like getting nothing while you're on the team, right? But it hurts. Like my cap resets in September, and September to December almost every year is like, man, like how the frick am I going to survive off of making $3,000 a check, But whatever. Because like you sell, let's say a $500,000 house, that's $15,000. The office takes their split. Well, actually, so the team takes their split first, and then the office takes their split. So when everything's said and done, you're making like $4,000 or $5,000 maybe off of a $15,000 commission. That's also another thing. When people ask me if like I'll discount my commission, I'm like, dude, it's so much more than that. Like if I discount my commission, I'm going to be like, I have to sell 3 or 4 of these instead of like 1 or 2 of them just to make ends meet on a monthly basis. But no. So I mean, I do tell them, I'm like, you like, I have to pay taxes out of that. I pay taxes quarterly. So one of the things was the best decision that I ever made, and I would recommend it if Novely starts talking about it soon, is taking or talking to Novely about um, paying your taxes quarterly. So like get an LLC and an S corp set up, and then get somebody to help you pay taxes at the end of every quarter instead of at the end of the year, because our tax bills are big. Like the reality is that like I made, just shy of $200,000 last year. So my tax bill is pretty fat, but I paid it in quarterly. So it wasn't so bad. So I can pay $5,000 here and, 7 grand here. It's a lot easier to take in than trying to pay 10, 20 grand at the end of the year or whatever it might be. Right. Plus, if you have an S corp, there's tax benefits to writing your own or paying yourself a W-2. So like you're paying yourself like a salaried wage, which takes away I don't really even fully understand it if I'm being completely honest, but that's why I have people that do it for me, and it's not very expensive. So, um, anything else?
Why stay,
If I make less money?
stay,
Um, well, I mean, that's a good question. The Red Sign team's a little bit different because they provide leads, right? So some teams you like join the team and there's like, what am I getting out of the team to justify um, working on the team? Like 50% of your commission, right? Like, is it make sense? Well, on the Red Sign team, obviously they're big, so they've had lots of like different listings all over the place that are constantly getting sign calls. They have one of the highest reviews, like a number of reviews and ratings on Google. And so we get people that call from Google all the time. And that's a big deal because those are usually like, we want a list right now. We're just Googling somebody. We have a marketer that I know that for me to pay somebody that does what Caton's job. So that's the thing is like, there's like multiple people that if I had to hire them individually or in one person, it would cost me so much, $100,000 at least. So when I was on my own, I was using Jen Gray. Have you ever heard that name? She does transaction coordinating for like agents. And I really liked her. It was like $350 a transaction, which is nothing. For her to do all the paperwork and do all the compliance and everything like that, $350 is nothing. And then but I was just paying it out of my own bill. And then after I joined Red Sign actually charges a transaction fee. So not just charging 3%. So we charge 3%, but we also charge a transaction fee. So for every house that they sell, they charge $495. That goes towards paying a salary of one of the transaction coordinator that's on there. I could have done that and probably been, I mean, way ahead, right? Because then I'm not paying $350 a transaction. But I didn't do that because I just felt like it was like, man, they're already paying us $3,000 or 3%. Like, do I want to charge them another extra $495? Not really, but I could have, and I do it now. So it's like, why couldn't I do it? But yeah. Anything else? I thought you guys would have a lot more questions.
Well, so what is the best for? Best,
Oh, uh, that-
best thing for leads?
yeah, 1,000% it's calling your SOI, calling friends and family. And it sucks because like when I first started, so I think I'm going to tell you a story that I think, does everybody have time or you need to leave? You keep checking your watch. Okay. I'm going to tell you a story because I think it's relevant to all of you because you're new agents. So I started back in 2010. We're in a recession. And I started in Brigham City. Do you know where that is? Brigham City, Utah. So I was young, dumb, and didn't know any better, but I bought our first house and I saw 3% commission. I'm like, I'm going to stop doing whatever the frick I'm doing and go and make better money selling houses. So I got my license, and one of my best friends in high school his dad was a broker and he worked at Exit Realty. And I was like, oh, just go to work at Exit Realty. So when I started, there were 65 agents in the office, and within a month, there was only 7. So in a month from when I started, all of them dropped off. Okay. And I started with them just because it was convenience, right? I didn't interview with anywhere else. I didn't know anything. I didn't get any training. So there was another agent in that office they cut their teeth on door knocking. There was a guy named Bill Nasby that's like took stuff that Mike Ferry did and then changed it. And he had like a whole door knocking, like prospecting, like how you pick up clients. And so I picked that up and started knocking. I knocked every door in Brigham City. And I sold some houses, but not enough to justify renewing my license at the 2-year mark. So how many of you know what the failure rate is for real estate agents? Yeah, it's like 80+% of people that get into the business bail out in the first 2 years. And that's because that's when their dues come due. That's when they have to pay their like renew their license and pay their dues and everything. And so they're like, does it justify? And I was doing it. I'm like, I don't really know if I want to keep doing this because knocking doors. And like I said, I sold a few houses. But anyways, I just decided, I'm like, no, I'm bailing out of this. So I gave up after 2 years. And so, oh yeah. Oh, and that location was significantly worse than other locations because we're in a somewhat rural town. Brigham City is like a gateway to Logan. And then obviously there's nothing in Brigham City. And like the lifeblood of that particular community was a company called ATK or Thiokol. And at that time, they canceled the project to like they stopped sending or making missiles or NASA like rocket boosters. And so they laid off a big portion, like all the best jobs were at that place. So they laid a bunch of people off. Well, anyways, every house was a short sale. It sucked. Anyway, so I bailed out of the business. So for 3 years, I took a hiatus. I got a different job, was working somewhere else, and I was commuting from Brigham City to Spanish Fork because they moved me to a different location. And so I was like, man, this is crazy. This is a crazy drive. So I moved down to Utah County. And when I moved down here, I ran into somebody that was like in the business that I knew from when worked before. And I was like, I should just I just like renew my license again and just get back into the business and sell a few houses here and there. But I went to go and renew my license. 3-year mark is when, if you don't like, yeah, it expires if you don't. So I had to take the test all over again, go through the whole thing, take the classes, and I got my license again. But this time I was like, I'm gonna interview with a real estate, like a brokerage that offers some training and that's like better known. And the weirdest thing about the whole thing is when I was on my own or when I was with the Exit Realty, um, I didn't get any training. I was all figuring it out all on my own. And so I would Google stuff and I would just like try to figure it out. And I came across a book called The Millionaire Real Estate Agent. And I had read that book when I was on my own. Did they give you that book? They should give you that book. That book is like so incredible. But anyways, I read that book and I was like, okay, I'm just going to join Keller Williams. Like that's what I want to do. So I interviewed with Keller Williams, Coldwell Banker, and Berkshire and Hathaway. At the time, it was Prudential. Um, and I met with Johnny, and Johnny was. Does anybody know who Johnny is? He's our regional director. He's like basically what Shoney is now. So Shoney is like the team leader, but that was Johnny's position at the time. He's like a tall redhead guy. Um, really well spoken, really smart. He's like, yeah, you should join here. We have lots of training. I was like, I don't know, maybe I was kind of already leaning Keller Williams anyways. Um, and he's like, just come sit in on one of our team meetings. So our team meetings that we have now are not nearly as cool as they used to be. Like right now, they feel like they're kind of like lecture-ish. You come and sit down and they like tell us like this is what's going on in AI or like the world and stuff. But when the office was smaller before it got to up to like 300 agents, it was just like a bunch of people just hanging out. And so I went into their team meeting. It was at the old office that was over there by Milagros. And I go into the team meeting, a little small room, about maybe a third of this size. Um, Go sit down, and I sat down next to an older lady, and her name's Jane Gray. Do you know? Have you ever heard of Jane Gray? Yeah, that's Jean Gray. Um, anyways, she's like taps me on the shoulder. She's like, "Hey, are you new?" And I'm like, "Yeah." She's like, "Look what I got," and she pulls a bubble gun out of her purse. And then she proceeded to squirt everybody with bubble guns as they like as they walked by, right? And I was like, I found my people. Like this is so like because if anybody knows me, I'm like, all I want to do is just mess around and talk with people and just fart around and make jokes and stuff. I don't know. So I was like, this is exactly where I want to be. And so I signed up, and then it's been the best decision ever because they have classes like this. So like obviously like I'm teaching, but there's been other people that have taught me exactly like I'm teaching you, um, that have like some of them made a lot of sense. It's like, okay, well I can do this. Like that's easy enough. But I cut my teeth on door knocking. Like that's how I got started. But what I wish I would have done, long story short, is I wish I would have started by talking to friends and family because those are the easiest appointments. You basically have it before you even go on the appointment. um, Referrals from your family, like they're so much easier. Like SOI is so much easier to like close deals from. But I did everything door knocking originally. I would go door to door and look for people that were thinking about moving. I had a whole script and like a whole plan on like how I followed up with them. And I've sold millions and millions and millions of dollars of real estate from door knocking, which some people are like, I remember the guy that taught the training classes, like I said, his name was Bill Nasby. People are like, isn't it unprofessional to kind of like be a door knocking? Like you think of like the solar guys or, pest control. Like, is it unprofessional to go door to door and sell real estate? Like ask people if they're thinking about moving. Or like, is it unprofessional to make $200,000 a year? And at the time that was like an insane amount of money for me. So I was like, yeah, I'll freaking knock every door in town for 200 grand. But yeah, I bet and I've done basically everything like for sell by owners, expired listings, uh, open houses. For me, it's been SOI. So SOI, friends and family, referrals, those type of stuff. That's definitely number one. Um, and then door knocking's probably number two for me. And then I would say probably sign calls or like KSL and stuff. But now that I'm on the team, my number two is probably online lead generation because the team puts that together. But I was never big on that. Because I was always leaning towards like listings. I wanted more listings because there's a leverage in it. It's easier. Buyers like you have to like you just never know. You could show them 50 houses and then they never end up buying, right? Takes more time, a lot of driving. But you want it but typically with new agents, they tend to lean into buyers a lot more because they're easier. Getting a listing's a lot harder. Um, Anything else? Is that everything?
What's the conversion rate? I mean, like, are you imagining
Um,
100
that kind of depends. So I had a real good system, dude. It's not like I was like just willy-nilly, doing it. So what I had figured out is obviously townhomes and condos have a higher like um like they have a higher turnover rate. Take enough? It's nice meeting you. Um, they have a higher turnover rate, so I would knock condos and townhouses. Plus, their doors are closer together, so you can get more doors in a shorter period of time. Um, and they're always move up. So it's not like they're, relocating. Like it's easier for them. You can sell a townhouse and then they buy a single family home, right? So it's a twofer. Um, Sometimes you get a renter like from door knocking. Like I knocked the preserve that's over here, the condo townhomes and stuff like that that's over here that was built by Edge. There's been times where I've knocked every door in that area. Um, so let's say like I don't know what the turnover rate is, 1 to 50. The red book has suggestions that it's like for every person that you don't know that you talk to, you get one transaction. So that's like 1 out of 50. So sometimes you get lucky and you'll like run into like one person after talking to 25 people and they'll buy two houses, or they'll sell their condo and then go buy another house. But sometimes you'll like knock for like 100 doors or more and you'll talk to a ton of people and you won't ever get a deal. Sometimes it's just hit or miss, right? But what I would do is I would knock on the door. Um, they would answer. I would just say, hey, my name's Colby. I'm a real estate agent with Keller Williams. When are you planning on moving? Actually, I changed it. I used to say that, but I changed it to we've sold a lot of homes in this particular neighborhood, or we just sold a home in this neighborhood. We know that when one home sells, there's usually somebody else in the neighborhood that's thinking about moving. When are you planning on moving? And the answer is it's an open-ended question. They can't just say yes or no. Like no, and they say no, you're like, wait, that doesn't make sense. So, and then there's like 5 questions that you ask. You ask them, how long have you lived here? Well, most of the time they're like, we're not moving. You're like, okay, well, how long have you lived here? Where did you move from? If you were to move, where would you like to move? And then when would that be? So like you kind of circle back around and say like when are you thinking about moving? And most of the time they're like, we're not planning on moving. Thanks for your time. If they say no, we're not interested, I just like move on because I'm not like really interested in pushing somewhere where I'm not wanted. Like I'm not a pest control guy, right? Um, Anyway, sometimes they'd be like, actually, we are thinking about moving. I'm like, awesome. Well, my goal here is I'm just looking for people that are thinking about it. I'll just keep you informed so when the time does come, we can be your preferred resource, right? And so then I get their name and phone number. I'm already standing at their door, so I have their address. And then I take all that information. I go back to the office after I'm done door knocking. I write them a thank you card with a magnetic business card, and then I would send it to them. And then after that, I would send them a market analysis. I'd literally do a full-on market analysis of their house. I actually shifted to a different one when actually when I let's see, after a little while, I discovered where is it? There's a way home beat. So in here, I think it's like $10 a month. You can set them up for a monthly email that polls all the homes in the neighborhood around them, you can put in all their like information, and then it'll pull all the homes that have sold around them and then send them an email. I actually switched it to this. I used to do a CMA, put it in a packet, like a print it off and then take it to them. But that got too time consuming. So then I switched to this, and then I would touch base with them 8 times over 8 weeks and then just stay in touch. And then I got tons of homes. Like I've sold tons of homes that way. But it's mostly just like you're finding somebody that's like, it piques their interest, like they're already thinking about it. And then you're just being the agent that they think about when it comes time for them to sell. So like I just stayed in touch with them so that when the time came, they're like, oh, let's just call that guy that's been talking to us. Right. Um, but yeah, I sold a lot of homes that way. Friends and family is just about calling them. I call everybody. I do a DTD2 program. Have you ever heard of that? You've heard of that? The Yeah. So you take their last name and you put them into a bucket of 2 letters from the alphabet. So there's 13, so there's 26 letters in the alphabet. You divide that into 13, there's 13 weeks in every quarter, right? So for every quarter, you call 2 letters from the alphabet once a week, right? Or a week. So that way, every quarter, you will have called everybody in your database. Does that make sense? Um, yeah. So we do that on our team. That's like one thing that we do. Um, and then I've actually shifted recently because I have too many people that are like raise their hands, but they're at different levels. So like I've actually gotten to the point where, and I highly recommend getting a CRM. Like you already have like, do you guys use Command? I recommend using Command if you can, but sometimes it might make sense to like look at like an alternative, like something that's like more robust or like better. They don't really cost too much money, but Command serves as a good like as a good, baseline. But I got in a habit of anytime somebody raises their hand and says, "Hey, look, we're thinking about moving," you put them in a bucket of whether or not they're a hot or in nurture, meaning, do I need to touch base with them more than 4 times a year? Because you touch base with everybody in your database 4 times a year. Some people that say they're thinking about moving, the hot people, I'm like every single week I call them or text them. And then the nurture people is every single month. So if there's somebody that's like, yeah, we're thinking about moving in the next 6 months, I literally reach out to them every single month. And the thing is you would think that would get annoying, and maybe it does. But I've lost so many deals because I wasn't annoying enough. You're more likely to lose the deal because you're not following up than you are to lose the deal because you're following up too much. Does that make sense? So, and I've lost so many that way. And I'm like, geez, I just would have freaking followed up a few more times. I would have got that deal. But, and then when you're talking about like a commission that's like $20,000, you're like, dude, I'm such an idiot. Like a one phone call, like who cares? Um, but yeah. Anything else? If you guys want copies of any of these things, actually, I'll just leave them. But you guys have any questions? Anything else? I went long. I'm sorry I was late. Nothing? You good? Okay. Well, this was fun. Yeah.
I don't know how you found it, just ask. So I just leave it into the language. Is that?
Yeah. No. That's 100. That you are gonna like when you become a new agent, or even when you're like you've been an agent for a little while, you will get bugged by title companies and lenders all the time because we are the first line of like defense or the first line of like people call us first over a lender or a title company. So like you are their access to business. So they're gonna like buy you lunch, they'll like take you out, they're like all kinds of stuff. If it's within the legal guidelines of what they can do, they will do it. So yeah, like I still get calls all the time. Like somebody wants to take you out to lunch. I'm like, I do not want to go to lunch. I hate going to lunch with people. Yeah, it's like you're by yourself. Like it's like you're by yourself with some other person that you don't really know, and you're like, nope, I'm not interested in this at all. I'm not really into small talk. And I already have people that I use, so. But yeah, people will hit you up all the time. Really? Who is it?
Um,
Sounds familiar. I don't know. Have you sold deals already? I don't know. Are you on social media? No. I don't know. Like,
like sketch.
well, I mean, I would say, look, I would go with you, but I'm not going to go alone. This is also like, are you married? Or you have a boyfriend or something? Like that also is like that's also like a weird thing for me is like sometimes title agents like we're like, well, we want to take you to lunch, and I'm like, I'm not going to lunch with like a single girl. Like that's like somebody's going to take a picture of me, and I'm going to be like, I'm going to end up on the streets, you know? Old.
Fast.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a good call. Like sometimes people will come into the office